So we feel all very much energized. Thank you very much, Tim, for that. Tim was talking about something that at the beginning of his speech that I thought was really interesting. He talked about these refugees coming to Europe and that we should be very welcoming to them because they bring entrepreneurship, energy, ideas, and they are mostly coming from the East. And I was actually reading just a week ago an article in the Financial Times about not the refugees, but a returnee. A guy called Lars Fjeldsø Nielsen, who went to Silicon Valley 10 years ago and has now decided to go back to Europe. And he is explaining why he goes to Europe. And it sounds very much similar. He says this is because we bring something that really can live in Europe. We have the networks, we are interested in global markets, and what do you find in Europe? You find now a completely different environment with access to capital, access to talent, access to tools, and by the way, it's a lot cheaper too, and very good quality in terms of math, science, and technology. So definitely it's possible to have refugees and returnees doing a fantastic job in Europe. Now, I think that fits very much with Startup Europe coming to Silicon Valley. It's about networking, it's about getting access to skilled professionals, people who know about technology and how technology works out. It's about understanding how the public sector helps to make life easier for entrepreneurs. And it's also about seeing some of the potential of European companies. There are 15 examples here that go from IT and healthcare, data analytics, e-commerce, that are examples of those that have, we hope, great potential, and we think they do. Now, an event like this can play a great role in building that bridge, indeed, mind the bridge, in building the bridge between Europe and Silicon Valley. And I think also to see that there is a lot of opportunity in and from Europe. What are we doing as a European Union? So I'm from the European Commission, and loosely speaking, the European Commission is assisting the governments in Europe in day-to-day building greater unity and diversity in Europe. Now, what we are working very much on is, while technology is changing, a digital world and economy is very much part of Europe, to make sure that those 28 countries in Europe are also fit for the digital age. That while you have 28 countries, you reduce fragmentation in the digital single market, and in order to enable that free flow of people, the free flow of goods and services, the free flow of talent and business and services. And so it's also very much about making 28 countries work together and to enable industry to take full advantage of the digital world in Europe. And I think that has everything which is contrary to those words that were just mentioned, that thou shalt not use. This is really ambitious, and we think actually it's possible even if it is a dream. So the EU's digital single market. Let me just mention some of the activities that we are taking there. First of all, this single market, so it's about a free flow in Europe between all those countries, is one of the top priorities of the European Commission. It is where it's perhaps more obvious in the United States that there is a single market, that there are no borders. That's not necessarily the case in Europe. Countries have their autonomy, they have their own ways of working, they have their own institutional systems, and removing walls and borders and barriers is a key element of the single market. It's also to remove regulatory barriers that exist, so that it is simpler for both consumers and businesses to operate in that very large, over 500 million consumer market in Europe. This is what the digital single market strategy is about. And within that strategy, which is a policy, there's a range of measures that is being taken that also will help the digital startup community to reduce administrative burden and to create more access to this ecosystem, the entrepreneurial ecosystem in Europe. Right as we speak, as a matter of fact, several of these measures are being developed and will be adopted shortly around, for example, simpler rules for operating around telecommunications. But right now, already we have in this strategy proposed a set of rules around harmonizing online sales online. Online sales, the rules for that. Improving transparency on parcel delivery, very important in the digital economy. Soon we will come with measures around modernizing copyright. We are exploring whether the value-added tax legislation can be simplified, can be made more easy, more user-friendly. And a major piece of legislative work has been put in place around data protection that no doubt you all have heard about, the General Data Protection Regulation. We think that that is an example of an ambitious scheme that can benefit consumers, citizens, and businesses. And we also think, as a matter of fact, that we got it right in Europe. So this is something that is also relevant for people all around the world. We are at the moment working on an initiative so that the freedoms of the free flow of people, goods, services, capital in Europe is complemented by another freedom, which is the free flow of data. So that there are no unnecessary restrictions to where the data are being held and who can do something intelligent, smart with those data. That would unlock a lot of value in the digital economy. Now, when we are operating in this area, we need to know what is it that the entrepreneurial community, the consumers, the citizens, the public administrations, the businesses at large, what they think. So many of these measures are developed around a very close interworking with those communities. Public consultations, but also in-depth studies and exchanges like conferences like here, where we understand what are the problems that you're running into when you want to do business in Europe, and what can we do about it between those 28 different markets. And so we are also working on related issues, such as around capital. We are working on the Capital Markets Union in order to improve access to finance for startups and small companies, especially when it is across border, for access to equity and venture capital. Better conditions, therefore, for startups. It's a real priority. Now, when we talk about the startup ecosystem, we are really at the heart of Startup Europe. The Startup Europe initiative, of which this is part, is designed not only to make it easier for European entrepreneurs to network and to access resources across border, be it skilled employees, know-how, training, finance, and markets, but it is also intended to reach out internationally, to be part of global networks, and therefore also an event like this one. Let me, within the whole spectrum of the many actions that are taken around digital policy at the European level, and that real change that I think also the entrepreneur, the returnee entrepreneur was pointing to that is happening in Europe, around those many actions, let me mention in particular one. As here in Europe, there are also many traditional industries. And it was actually also just mentioned by Tim Draper. What are all those, let's say, more traditional industry where digital can make a real difference? Where you can think of quite different approaches to service delivery that are a lot cheaper, more efficient, closer to customers. Well, digitization of industry is a real part of the European Digital Single Market Strategy. We launched an initiative around digitizing industry in April of this year. And it's where the high-tech industry can engage with its robotics, its data analytics, its high-performance computing with the more traditional industries who can also benefit from that. Whether this is in automotive, healthcare, energy, telecoms, or indeed in the public sector itself. Whatever sector, whatever size, we think they can benefit, and there are many opportunities to go about with digital. So we are looking for further initiative to stimulate digitization of industry in Europe at large. And we are also investing in that. We are investing hundreds of millions in creating digital innovation hubs in a whole range of areas across Europe. So this is something that may also benefit the digital entrepreneurship ecosystem at large. This is just one example of the type of initiatives that can stimulate entrepreneurship and can also stimulate the startup community to work together with the big players, or the not so big players, but the established players in the traditional industries. Within that, there is, for example, a particular area where we have just launched another large initiative with a value of 2 billion in terms of research and investment, which is around cybersecurity. We have established a contractual private-public partnership between the cybersecurity technology community and those that are more at the demand side. So those that really need to have strong security in place. A great opportunity to start in a responsible way using digital solutions in a secure way in many of the established industries. Let me finish. When we are talking about startup measures, as I said before, it's important to work with the communities that have an interest in it and that can express their desires and their ambitions and also where they see barriers. One of the things is that these communities can do a lot of work themselves to formulate where do they want to go with startup opportunities and scale-up opportunities in Europe. These communities have been working together and they will present a manifesto by the end of this month to Commissioner Oettinger, one of the politicians at the European level responsible for the digital policy. It will be called the Scale-Up Manifesto. I think you will see with this that the European ecosystem is becoming more innovation-friendly, is becoming more dynamic, more open for technology startups and scale-ups, and investment is definitely on the rise. What will help in that is this digital single market strategy to make a more attractive system across Europe, across the 28 member states. And in developing that, we are convinced that the technology communities and the entrepreneurial communities across both sides of the Atlantic can help each other. In a certain sense, the goals are the same. Being successful with solutions that make a difference for people, being successful in unlocking new markets, being able to realize the ambitions and the dreams that we have. And so we are all interested in that way. The partnership is really there around digital technologies in creating jobs and growth. Thank you very much.